Great, thank you so much. We've got about 16 people, well, 14 people online. So, oh yeah, perfect, thank you. Thanks everyone. Welcome to the San Luis Obispo County Flood Control and Water Conservation Water Resources Advisory Committee, WRAC. So for our official reporting there. So today is Wednesday, November 2nd, and calling this meeting to order. So we're going to start with the introductions and welcome. I think we're not quite at quorum yet.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like we'll make it, but let's go ahead and do our introductions, and we'll go around the room first, and then we'll touch on folks who are online. I'm Andy Keys, San Luis Obispo City Council and current chair of WRAC.
Yeah, Brendan Clark, County Public Works, WRAC Secretary. Joey Style, Program for the Public Works.
Howard, Water Resources Manager.
Dan Heimel, Confluence Engineering Solutions.
I'm Laura, RCD.
Maybe we go with county.
ETC. Steve Carter, Oak County Farm Bureau.
Pretty much, so can form your all.
Tom Burhan, alternate for Eric.
Okay, we can take them talk about Radiant of Cambria CSP. Eric Greening, environmental at large.
Christine Mulholland, environmental at large.
Great, thanks so much. And then folks online, I'll go
So
ahead.
that's 9.
9.
So we don't have a quorum.
So we don't have an in-person quorum for today, so this will be unless others show because we need 12. So yeah. But we'll go ahead and do an informational meeting, and then the couple of voting items we'll have to I think there was only minutes, but they were voting on.
And number 4, if we wanted
Oh, in the end.
to address the quorum. So point made. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going online and just as you unmute. I'm going to do it off of my screen. So I'm going to call you in unmute. Marshall.
I am Marshall Miller. I am the substitute for Steve Sinton for the Shandon San Juan Water District.
Laurel.
Hi, I'm Laurel Barton. I'm here for City of Morro Bay.
Thank you, Laurel. Deborah.
Deborah Logan, Templeton, CSD.
You, Spencer.
Hey everybody, this is Spencer Waterman with Water Systems Consulting.
Jenny. Williamson.
Jenny Williamson, Public Works.
Jeff Edwards.
Yes, good afternoon. Jeff Edwards from Los Osos, member of the general public.
Mark.
Good afternoon, Mark Zimmer, Golden State Water Company.
Great, thanks. And looks like Mark's at the UC Cooperative Extension without a microphone. So thank you both, Marks. Ron Munn.
Ron Munns, Los Osos CSD.
Dolores.
Good afternoon, everyone. Environmental at Large alternate. Dolores Howard.
Thanks, Dolores. Blaine.
Thanks. SLO County Groundwater Sustainability.
Okay. Nick Teague.
Hi, Nick Teague, City of San Luis Obispo.
Kelly.
Lisa Garvey, Corolla Engineers.
Julie Ridgway.
Julie Ridgway, City of San Luis Obispo.
Thanks. Elisa Garvey.
Oh, sorry. I thought I heard my name earlier. I must have jumped in on somebody else. I'm Elisa Garvey from Corolla Engineers. Sorry about that.
Oh, thanks. I might have skipped around. Okay. Kelly Dodd. Kelly, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Okay, we'll circle back. Scotty?
Good morning or good afternoon, I guess. Scott Jalbert, County OES and Drought Task Force.
Thanks. Toby?
Yes, good afternoon. Toby Moore, Water Resources Manager with Golden State Water Company.
Circling back, Kelly, did you have?
Hopefully you can hear me. This is Kelly Dodds with San Miguel Community Service District.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do hear you. Let's see, Alan?
Duckworth, 5th District.
Alan. Matt Cook.
Matt Cook, Golden State Water.
Thank you. Kate Valentine.
Yeah, Kate Valentine with County Public Works.
Perfect. All right, the squares move around sometimes, so did I miss anyone? No. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Really appreciate the attendance, and yeah, we'll have to have that conversation about quorum and what that will look like and what our options are going forward. So, sorry, Christine.
Yes, thank you. I understand that without a quorum, we're not voting on the minutes today. But I'd like to make a comment in case it was missed or perhaps it was duly ignored. But I do believe on number 8 at the bottom of the page, item on the agenda, that I commented on the rainfall levels and comparison in September for the last 35 years. And maybe that wasn't interesting or got dropped off, but perhaps you had an opportunity to check the page.
Yes.
Seems like it was long for it.
Of course, it was not on purpose.
Thank you.
I have a quick correction in the same area. When we're talking about the arc event, that is to do with rainfall, not probably. So we'll be talking about
Here, are there any, we won't vote on this time, but are any other comments? And for those online, if you raise your hand, then I'll call on you, or since there's actually 2 screens worth, if you unmute and holler if I don't see you. So okay, so
top of the last page, I'm just wondering who 1:46:15 greening is.
That's the timestamp on the recording. So we'll take that out.
There's another one running around.
It's part of the multiverse, Eric.
okay. All right, next item is to receive our kind of our main course here is to receive a presentation and provide feedback on the master water report and information system update. Brendan Clark.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Brendan Clark, Public Works, provide a detailed update on our master water report, where we're at, project status. I'm going to go through the main task we've been working on is the data and information audit. So share a bit about what that is, kind of where we're at with it and where it's going, and then some next steps. And do it just right here at the top. Expect to hear some feedback and comments. We are still in the data gathering stage. We've not gone into the lab yet to take everything in. So definitely want to hear your input. We've got Dan here, part of our consultant team, to take notes for me. And yeah, so just a little bit of background. I know we came in, I think it was here in January, to present the scope of the project. So I'm not going to go over that too detailed, but just a kind of a primer of in the background of where we're at. So our last master water report was updated in 2012, and as you can imagine, it's out of date We've highlighted four of the kind of big things that happened. What's that? Oh. Some of the main things that happened in the last 10 years is historic drought, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, kind of a big deal, multiple iterations of our urban water management plan guideline, and now in our main water systems, our big water systems, we're doing annual reporting also to the Department of Water Resources. So there's a lot more data out there. It's up to date, and we're not. And so what we're looking at doing is creating an automated system and going beyond potable water, as we'll talk about in a little bit. Being able to have on-demand or at least regularly updated water supply and demand calculations, both for the whole county and regionally. And all with the purpose of informing decision makers and the public. There's a lot of big initiatives coming up, and I'll mention a few of those and how the Master Water Report can help tie into that. So our consultant team, after an RFP process, is Corlo Engineers is the lead and includes Confluence Engineering Solutions, like I said, Dan here, GSI Water Solutions to help us with groundwater, and Stillwater Sciences with the environmental piece. For our accounting team, Public Works is the lead. Courtney and I are the co-project managers. And we also have central IT is integral to the project as Corlo is developing this offsite, but the final product will be hosted by the county. So we've had central IT in since the beginning, even part of the RFP process. We're also coordinating closely with planning and building, groundwater sustainability, environmental health, our admin office, agriculture department, as well as LAFCO, SLOCOM. And the project for us kind of internally is broken down into 8 tasks on project management. And our stakeholder outreach, kind of what we're doing right now, is informing the meat of the project, our data and information audit, our data and information management system, or DIMS, the selection of that, the development of that system, as well as the reporting tools that are going into it. And those are all going to lead to our master water report update, which will be web-based. And we'll also be developing an operations model as well. So conceptually, what does this DIMS and master water report look like? We have our kind of, here you go, our data, our various inputs. We have analysis and outputs being compiled by our master water report and data. And then there's all sorts of different decisions, plans, and various outputs that are part, as we know, for our water in our county. So I've highlighted here in red, the inputs, analysis, outputs, and the use of those outputs. And what we found countywide is a lot of different of these groups and agencies, stakeholders, the county itself, and various divisions and departments are all using this water supply and demand data. But as our master water report ages, people are adding to it and doing their own thing. They start to see a lot of kind of fracturing of the data, and it's people are using different things. So as part of I mentioned of our audit, we have inputs. These are all sorts of our precipitation data, the existing infrastructure, our land use, our general plans, which define the demand, our existing urban water management plans. Those are our inputs coming into our master water report system. That's going to analyze all the different time horizons and boundaries of this data, compile it into our supply and demand and other reporting to help what we know is going on countywide. So this is the kind of the beginning of the conversations, the compilation of the conversations we've had with various departments internally in Public Works, hearing from LAFCO. All of these different departments and agencies are using water supply and demand to inform their governing boards or themselves as staff in their reports. And so what we're trying to do is make sure everyone's got the right amount, the right data, and using the same analysis. We're all using the same water supply and demand to make decisions, to make sure it's the full picture of everything. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And then so as things change, like land use or as urban water management plans change, as projects get built, we're going to be able to update these data and our analysis to provide that back, not just to our board of supervisors, but to everyone else for their use. Now, there are still a number of questions to answer, includes how we're doing environmental demand, How are we incorporating some of the latest technology that's out there, like satellite data for evapotranspiration? What is the protocol? How are we going to capture that land use? With a specific plan or zone changes coming in, how are we capturing that? If we're doing a land use based analysis, where we have water uses and water factors for different land uses, we need to be able to get from the planning department when zone changes occur. We need to be able to get that into our system. How are we going to track conservation? The state has targets. We know that being able to report on conservation is going to be something that's really important moving forward. And how do we work with managed basins? So these are conversations ongoing with Blaine, our groundwater sustainability director, and more. How can we help him and what he's doing? How can he help us with what he's doing?
Question?
Yes.
Talk about the changes in zoning or land use. So let's say, for example, kind of changes in ag land to rural residential. Are you using that to forecast water use and make assumptions about the rate of development? How many houses might be built and when? Is that
so? Yeah, that's a good question. The general plans for the county or for the cities set demand growth, set growth population growth rates. So we can be, that's how if we have a future demand of 2050 of X, it's based on that general plan that's adopted. But getting us between there, within a watershed, we're looking at this on a watershed level. There's X percent of ag, X percent of rural, of all these different uses, and trying to get a full picture of the water use in that watershed. We'll want to know when land use is changing from rural to ag, from ag to residential to or whatever. So it's something we want to be able to track and provide out to the planning department, to the board of supervisors, to whoever.
Thank you.
Are we asking questions?
I know, I just opened the box. I think I'll keep going, if that's okay. No, it's all right. I should have just asked for it. So just real quick back on this, as an example of a use, we have regional resiliency. Last year, you may recall, staff presented on the regional water infrastructure resiliency plan. And this was a one-time exercise went through of our top 40 largest water systems in the county and assessing. We started with the term vulnerability, kind of ended at who is most resilient or least resilient to critical failure, climate change, drought, and different things that can affect specifically water supply. And we went through a whole exercise with qualitative analysis on if state water goes down, who's most, if climate change affects the amount of water in our reservoirs, who is most affected by that, what water systems are affected. And we went through, and the result was kind of a ranked list of agencies who at this point in time, whether they had mitigation initiatives or not, or if they were kind of classified or bracketed as potentially vulnerable. And for the most part, these are water systems with a single source of water, groundwater. Well, anyway, we went through this exercise, and this is something that as staff, we want to be able to update and maintain, because projects get built, the factors that go into risk change, like say state water, Delta conveyance gets built, the resiliency of that system is theoretically now increased. Or we could get new climate change models from the state, and it's the dependency on our reservoirs has decreased. We're going to be able to reflect that in the system we're designing. So one of the things I wanted to show, I'm going to go through a few of these as part of our data and information audit. I know it's kind of small, but the point is just to show that we have detail of how are we getting from urban water management plans and qualitative risk scoring down to these resiliency risk brackets. How are we getting from the raw data? What's that analysis? And so these data source maps are something Corollo is developing for us, and that's what's going to be given to the programmers while we develop this system. So as another example, this is urban water demand. So we have our GIS layers, our boundaries, we have our urban water management plans, master plans, various assumptions. And that's going to come through and down after conversion and analysis. We'll have our current or existing demand, and that's these different data sources will provide us future demands that we can then report on and plan for in a way. And the last one I wanted to show is agricultural demand. Just to give a highlight here, how do we get to a an estimation of the water used by ag in a certain area? And we're looking at all of these different elements and conversions. The purple being the reported or studied data that comes at a certain interval, and then we have analysis. Those are the type of thing ag use, ag demand, or we'll go to our agriculture department. We got your guns part and say, how does this look? And perhaps we need to come see you, Brent, as well at the Farm Bureau. And then this is the logic that gets given to the GIS and the IT team to program it. And so we're all kind of working off the same idea and the same logic. The last thing I want to mention is project planning and support. So we know there are big decisions on the horizon, and maybe it's a far horizon down. But based on what we know now, water supply and demand trends, recycled water use and potential conservation metrics, and how other projects fit together are going to be really important with regulatory agencies and our own board of supervisors when we start talking about Salinas Dam and DSAP. And so there's something we have in mind now to build into the system to be able to report on in the future when necessary. And so what are our next steps in the project? We're going to complete the audit phase. So like I mentioned, we've been going around and saying, okay, what are we missing? What do we need to take a look at? And we've been going to various groups, and the WRAC is one of those groups we want to hear from. And then we're going to go into the lab and figure out, I showed you the 3 circles. What's everything we're going to capture in that middle circle, that master water report, data and information system circle? We're going to go and try to define exactly what the extents of that are. The project is in 2 phases. Phase 1 is clearly defined in a grant we've received. We'll be rebuilding the resiliency calculations, doing our supply and demand tables, and also some preliminary outputs specific to the planning department. But as far as phase 2 goes, what are the other reports we're going to do? What does recycled water reporting look like? What does conservation reporting look like? That's all still a little to be defined as we complete this audit. So something coming up in the next few months is getting some more clarity on the second phase of the project, as well as starting to develop the different alternatives for our data and information management system. And so with that, I will open it up for questions now. And that's where we're at on the project. Eric.
Yeah, going back to the, and this is a very helpful presentation. The slide that one sort of the circle with the various things that would be fed in, like managed basement plans and so on. Yeah. I want to be sure we don't lose. Right now, there's a process going on in the Adelaide area relative to fractured. It's not a basement. It's not. I don't know. You didn't even define it as basements. It's little pockets and fractured rock, but that area specifically is in the process of developing a plan, and that plan may or may not become sort of a pattern setter for other areas of fractured rock. I know we've had controversies around the Letitia area and so on. And so I want to be sure that fractured rock doesn't fall through the cracks, and that whatever information is being gathered at the time of each draft relative to the Adelaide area finds a use in terms of at least in its own right, and perhaps in terms of setting policy.
So packing that Adelaide area in a separate.
It's not a basin, but it's definitely an area.
Yeah, and what I'd say, and I don't have the chart loaded in this presentation. One of the things we're looking at is the 2012 Master Water Report puts supply and demand grouped by 16 different water planning areas. And what we're looking at doing is 6 water planning areas but down to 25 watersheds. So there are kind of different boundaries being analyzed for different things. But even within that, we're looking at, well, could we report out just on the boundary of the Los Osos managed basin area, that boundary itself, because there's water supply and use data specific to that boundary. So all that to say, the Adelaide study area could be its own boundary that has its own set of columns in our supply and demand for the greater water planning area.
Great, thanks, that's very reassuring.
It's all open, okay, we could.
I haven't seen general plans in here, and I'm assuming then my request that the water policies in the county's conservation element be very distinctly consulted and aligned with.
Yeah, it's been quite the discovery with everywhere in planning and buildings realm of where water appears. Been fascinating. Yes, David.
I'm just wondering, this is pretty impressive, but are you working out like 3 parallel models in regard to normal rainfall, vastly decreased rainfall, etc.? Because the reaction between parties and boxes changes if you have people really running out of water as against being sustained. And it would seem to me that one will need to look at the climate models as a guideline as to what to expect with regular agriculture, things like that. I'm making you probably have that in there, but it sounds like the expert business. More little boxes. I couldn't see them.
Yeah, so I'll come back to this one real quick. Question about the climate models. We're still, it's not answered yet. Does that happen in here, or does that happen in our operations model? What place are those, does that get inserted, and if they're anyway? So if it is something we want to make sure we capture, and but we don't know exactly where it's kind of pop in. Any other questions in the room? Otherwise, I could open up online.
Anyone online have questions? I got a couple.
Oh, okay.
One is, how is this accounting for kind of physical connectivity of systems? I know we're trying to have more infrastructure for distribution. Is that accounted for?
Yeah, the idea behind the operations model is for us in our water resources division to have the full county interconnectivity, kind of mapped out to be able to do scenarios and other things. Like our state water, they have their own model, or Zone 3 has Lopez Lake system has their own, but no one, I don't believe, has that full countywide of everyone who's connected to each other to be able to see how what we're trying.
Okay, so that's part of the resiliency.
Yeah, I would say that's the cascade operations model will capture that.
Okay, awesome. And then on the population data, kind of a big term, is that going to include obviously just quantitative, but is that racial, ethnic, income level, those types of things that might experience water impacts differently?
Like the disadvantaged community.
Yes.
Issues. We have not talked about population data specifically, but we'll take that and note down and we should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Seems like a good one. Yeah, exactly. But that might influence the investment as well as investment opportunities. And then I guess my third one is just, this seems like amazing and wonderful and ambitious. And so I'm wondering if there are examples, or is this type of ongoing live type of model, is that in place? Do other places have this? Is this something that physically works?
Yeah, I'd say it is ambitious and
in a good way.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know of any specific areas that are doing all of this in one system. There's different pieces that are around. Actually, our county is unique, and we're not as connected as maybe more urban counties that I would think have something similar to this, some kind of planning.
Mhm.
But I think that we are building something that I think
Yeah.
is fair to say.
Yeah, Lisa can weigh in.
Oh, yeah, I will. Yeah. Elisa, I don't know if you'd like to add in. Lisa is our project manager for Corolla. I'll let her take this out as something.
Yes, I can weigh in. I can't hear you guys very well. I don't know if you can hear me okay, but so I missed a little bit of that question. I heard Brendan talking, so I think I have the gist, but I can't hear this. I couldn't hear the question very well.
Sorry, I may have blocked myself. I was really just asking, it seems like a really, it's impressive, impressive yet complicated, or complicated yet impressive model. And I'm just wondering if the actual system, the reporting here has been done someplace else. Is this, is it gonna work?
Well, Corolla's done similar types of, built similar types of, I would say, custom designed digital systems for applications that do have some similar pieces. No tool is exactly the same, from one agency to the next. But we have built some digital tools that do look at things like population projections and supply projections and that kind of thing, and other functionality that generally involves the capture, assimilation of data, analysis of that, and reporting out, just as a general function. I will say one of, a good, and I could, one similar type of application, and this is not one that Corolla has built, but there's an application by the Texas DEQ, and they have a statewide reporting on some supply and demand across the state of Texas. Then you drill down into each of their 16, I believe, they're not called water planning areas, but they're 16 regional planning areas. And they have a similar tool where you are looking at that supply and demand picture, and you can sort of drill down and then also drill up at the, drill down to the regions and then wrap up into the state of Texas. So there are folks that are doing some similar work. We're doing something, again, not exactly the same, but has some similarities with the work that Corolla is doing for the Oklahoma State Water Plan, and that's a digital application too.
Thank you. So good that you're kind of national models that are, pretty fluent. Any other questions or comments, feedback? This is kind of an opportunity for us to make sure that everything's being covered that we want, or if there's particular groups that we think would benefit or have more specific feedback.
I would like to echo David's comment. This is an impressive piece of work here, and I hope you'll keep us posted and all the important points as it's developed, so we can continue to learn along with you.
Yes, I fully agree with this too. It is very impressive. I just feel very thankful that we have such incredible minds taking this kind of approach. And one other little detail in terms of environmental demand, I hope that in addition to stream flows, the issue of stream temperatures is accounted for as well. Thank you.
And I'll just add, anyone's welcome to reach out to me. My contact info is in every WRAC email, so feel free to call or email me with any other comments or thoughts. We'll take it in. So have yours about the conservation element written down, so in the to be reviewed pile. So I've not forgotten.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much. So the next item was going to be the ad hoc considering making changes to the ad hoc to the bylaws. Because it's biannual process. Did we have a particular item in the bylaws that we wanted to address?
The quorum number. I think my thought there was, we are missing some members, and so when we're full, we have 37 members, 37 alternates, and there's a few vacancies, and to consider, putting in maybe like a range. If we have 30 members, spots filled, could the quorum be 10? If we're 35 to 37, it's the full 12 or something, just something like that to kind of have the quorum kind of go up and down as the group this fluctuates in time. That was kind of the main idea I had. But we could get at it in our next, meeting or whatever. So, right. I don't know if we can take thoughts on it. It's an open agenda to take some thoughts on, but.
Do we need to form a committee?
Sorry, I just stopped writing
Just a
down.
question, Brendan, where does the at-large seat come from? Where is that on it? Kurt Bowles is probably having to move down to Spain.
Oh, he has. Okay. Yeah, I actually didn't know that. If you give me a second, the bylaws, I think it just says, it says anyone involved in production agriculture. So I'm reading from the bylaws. Shall be selected by the board of supervisors from applicants engaged in production agriculture. That's the only note. Yeah.
So then they apply here, they apply to you, you bring it forward for consideration and potential recommendation.
Correct. Yeah.
David?
Could you clarify the Brown Act issue about remotes? Does it specifically forbid that we cannot put people on the web into the forum? That's specifically in Brown Act. We can't get around. Simply, all these people were listening to the thing. They could have been added without a quorum.
So that's another. So my understanding on that is because the county does not have an active health emergency order, we're not able to use the COVID policies in changing of our meetings. So that we operate under the county health emergency. If other agencies have health emergencies still declared, that's my understanding, they can still use that AB 361, for example, that allowed for remote meetings. There is a legislation the governor signed into law last month that goes into effect in January, where if there's an in-person quorum, then all the members who are online get to actively vote and participate as a member, but it requires an in-person quorum. So that could be another thing for the bylaw committee to consider, a certain number in person and a certain number online, could be, and then we'll have to get into, which I've been avoiding, the who's going to be there in person email, but we may need to start, something like that to make sure we can get that quorum in person. Yes.
I don't particularly like the idea of a floating quorum number. I'm uncomfortable with that idea. I mean, if there are 5 of us here, then what, 3 are the quorum?
I meant filled member spots, sorry, like from the board, like we have vacant.
That's what I'm talking about. There are 5 members here. Then is the quorum 3? How floating is it going to be? So this is a concern for me. I'm also a little uncomfortable that now that there is no mandate for us not to meet in person, that we should honor those who come to the meetings and request everyone who is a member, unless they have contacted their alternate. For instance, today my alternate contacted me to be here so that she could stay home and listen. That kind of alternate use, I think, should be incumbent on the members to take care of, so that shouldn't have to be something you should ever have to do. But if we can't get more than 10 people here members, I should say, at a meeting, I'm uncomfortable with this idea of, well, we'll decide that a percentage of the members who are here will be the quorum, and that number will change then every time. And I think we need to start looking at mandatory attendance again, and 3 misses, you're off, as our bylaws say. We need to honor those who come and who want to be on this committee, unless there's another reason for health, safety, and welfare that we shouldn't meet in person, but it's just too comfortable to stay home. And I could stay home too. I can Zoom. But I think it's incumbent upon people who want to be members to come to a damn meeting.
All right, and just to, I think those are good points, and I think we might, it might be appropriate that there's a certain number that you can take in remotely or something in order to do that. I do, just before you comment, Eric, I do want to clarify that Brendan's point was not that we would decide in the moment. It's just that there are seats that don't have an appointment. That's totally out of our control. The supervisors have not filled their seats, and so our actual members are lower right now. And so a quorum for the full build out versus how many are actual members now might be the kind of adjustment. So we know ahead of time what the quorum is at any moment based on the roster, not on who's physically around.
The other option is for all of those seats to be filled, and if any organization is not filling their seat, then we start striking the seats. That would come out of the bylaws. Can't fill your seat after 3 months, you're out of here.
Okay, plenty of room for discussion. Eric.
Well, I'm not sure I would quite go there because there are voices that you've heard. But to reinforce Christine's point to another whole issue, I believe our strength is in our diversity, and we need to set the quorum high enough and attain it that decisions aren't made with important voices missing. If none of the agricultural people are here, or none of the environmental people are here, or if there aren't many CSD people here or city people here, there is a whole perspective that's missing. And so I tend to also say, let's set a quorum limit high enough that you can expect, if an official decision is made by the WRAC, then a variety of voices and interest groups has participated in and then heard in the crafting of that decision.
All right, thank you. I see Marshall online for comment.
I wanted to apologize that as the alternate for the Shandon San Juan Water District, I had not properly understood that remote attendance was not counting to the quorum. And I should have been up to date on that. My apologies.
Oh, it's a little bit of a tongue lashing over here. So folks online, we still love you. We're just trying to work this out.
We will do better in the future.
All right, but I think just to hold us over, we're going to need to, because we can't actually form an ad hoc committee without quorum. So I think we will do a physical quorum.
Yeah.
And make sure that we can do that while we debug this system. All right, anything else on that before we move on?
I'm the wrong item for the whole time.
No. All right, and next up, receive a presentation from David Chipping regarding sustainability of the Paso groundwater basin.
Yeah.
And do you want to stand?
So the order to pick up is on over here.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and move it for you, David.
So, yeah. And then just as way of introduction, just David had asked about that he had some information, and as part of the WRAC bylaws, it includes that we hear updates from each other, items of interest for your particular jurisdiction. So even though this isn't an action item for WRAC, we were interested in hearing the information. So, David, I'm gonna.
You're working?
Okay, I'll go ahead. We're missing a little bit of top of the slide, I think, but when I was looking at the Passover Thermal Space ESP, I had expected that the word sustainability would be a sort of prime target, and even though it seems to be okay, the long-term yield for sustainability is defined by the GSP as 61,000 acre-feet per year. That is the sustainable rate at which you can take water out of the basin. And the level of the basin was set at 2017, which happened to be the year that MOA was set between all the agencies involved. So I think that's the only reason why 2017 was chosen. So let's take a look at the actual data that is in the GSP. All the data here comes from the documents or the subsidiary feeding documents that went into it. The bottom line here is that if you're looking at the long term, it goes up and down, and you'll notice the general gradient of the curve on the way down and the story on the way up is about the same. So without giving you a whole bunch of numbers, I can, the exact amount of storage change in each of those jumps, I will summarize it as saying very roughly that on the way down, you're losing about 40,000 acre-feet per year, and on the way up, you're gaining about 40,000 acre-feet per year. So generally speaking, that can be used as a back of the envelope calculation for what future conditions might be and what general water loss or general water gain to the basin.
Dave, sorry,
There's something that,
yeah.
Can you put that on the look at the individual page, and I can just go from page to page, because most PDF viewers, there you go. That's what we want.
And it's a little small, so just to be clear, the green bars are rainfall. No, is that right? No.
Yeah, yes, the great, that is right. The green bars are rainfall.
Okay.
And the up and down is storage change.
The red is the storage change, the yellow, that's dry years, and the wet years are in blue. Okay.
And I can make these slides available to anyone who wants. All right. But they sent in two versions of this. The first one got jumped down, so that is stuff with that in near the end. The 2012 and 2016 dry period, for example, it actually the 40,000 acre-feet per year actually holds, as you can see. So it just sort of backs up that number. And then we had the very last additions to the GSP were sent in with the last version. And they actually go through one of the wettest years we've had for a long time. And if that's the center bar there, the sustained yield level of 61,000 is that red dotted line through the middle there. And you can see that we're an overdraft, even in the year when it rains a lot. So overall, over that time period, there is again a net loss to the basin. Okay, now the actual science behind this study was actually very, very good, I thought. So I have no problem with that. It's just the conclusions drawn thereon. They looked at the two water sources that are used in the basin. And the GSP looks at what's called the alluvial aquifer, which is the shallow stuff along the river and the other things. And then the Passerellos formation, which is the dominant deep gravel formation for which the bulk of the water is taken out. So you can see here that that actually the figures are kind of interesting, that you're actually losing more from the alluvial aquifer during dry periods than is being taken out from the wells, which is sort of interesting. So it's going someplace, but it's not going up the well pipes. Presumably going, we believe, probably underneath Paso Robles formation. Because when you look at the Paso Robles aquifer, you'll find that even though they're taking out a large amount of water, the basin storage in the Paso Robles formation does not go down by that amount. So it's getting water from someplace else, and my suspicion is from the overlying aquifer, and also, and Shandon might want to take note of this, from the east, and that the if you drain the Paso Robles aquifer, it basically downslope of the Paso Robles aquifer users in the Shandon area, then they are going to be net losers. Okay, so please try and get my notes ready to here. So the implication is then we've got a what I just told you, so let's just move on quickly from there. All right, so 2017, by the way, as a choice standard is rather a strange choice, because as you can see from the first slide, the whole aquifer has been losing all the way up to 2017. And there's a report that was produced from GSI, one of the guys who were involved in the county and new study. And they showed that in the previous years, just before 2017, there have been 236 dry wells since 2013, and all kinds of bad things were happening in the basin. So it is sort of strange to see that that is considered to be good, in that obviously the basin was not in a healthy state leading up to the choice of 2017 as a space to go. All right. Now, what I've got the original curve, and I've got there the actual the straight line curve, if you like, of data. So you can basically see what it was. All right. That comes out. What's my take on my notes here? What slide am I on? 9. Okay. Thank you. So what we're looking at here is a loss of 350,000 acre-feet of storage over 30 years. It comes out, actually, when you look at this curve, at 11,600 acre-feet per year. That's the long-term loss over the base, 11,600 acre-feet per year. If one was to carry this on to 2040, when the GSP actually comes in, you're going to lose another 197,600 acre-feet. And as you kind of wonder, well, where's 2017 in all this? And you realize that they're draining the basin way, way, way down below the 2017 level. And I don't know, quite sure how they would aim to get back into the 2017 level from the hole that they're quite literally digging in water. It's a difficult place to dig holes, but they seem to be managing to do that. Looking at that, right, my notes here, it's rather interesting to see what the economic impact of all this is. It is actually rather scary. If we were going to try and bring that deficit down to a sustainable level, it looks like we would need an 18 to 20% reduction in the pumping rate. That might be overly pessimistic, because remember, we were seeing water coming in from other areas, so it may not be that bad. But Hamilton and McCullough at Cal Poly did an economic analysis of of the losses that you would experience to irrigated agriculture for various levels of loss. And you can see here, I can't, by squinting, I've got the numbers, but you can see they're hovering around these sort of below 20%. I think 23% is high and 17 is low or something then there. But the numbers are big. You can see many millions of dollars are lost to production agriculture. So the implications here are quite serious. The big problem is, of course, that the longer you put off doing something, the worse it gets to be. So do we see in the GSP any attempt to slow the rate of decrease and slide upward to the 2017 level? And unfortunately, that does not seem to be actually taking place. So this is actually from the GSP's goals. You can see here, if you look at the total groundwater pumping, there's a historical level, is what that little black arrow is. Their planned level, you can go the little black arrow ends, and in the middle, what it is at the moment. And you can see, yes, they're going to be pumping less than they're pumping at the moment, but they're going to be pumping more than the traditional long-term pumping rate of the basin. So there's no indication here that there's any intention of having much less in the way of pumping, certainly nothing in the region of 18 to 20%. So this is, you know, kind of bad. You kind of wonder, well, where's the sustainability part of this when your actual plan itself says you're going to be using more water out of the basin? It is peculiar, to say the least. It's not a lot of water. The deficit that they've got there is actually quite small compared with the total capacity of the basin. So there are studies from Food Growth and others, and I don't have any of the slides there, that go over 1 million you can see in the basin. So you've got a lot of time to draw down the water and make drill wells deeper and deeper and deeper all over the basin. But so you're not going to run out of water immediately. You're going to run out of cheap water and high quality water very quickly. As the deeper you go in the Paso Robles formation, the more minerals there are in it, and the quality of the water from lower Paso Robles is actually quite poor. Okay, so we plan to have a negative average storage of 13,700 acre-feet per year. I, on the curves, came out with 11,600 acre-feet per year, if you remember. So those numbers are actually damn close to each other, and that sounds like business as usual. So you kind of wonder, well, what else is going on in the basin? Is there anybody else in the basin that is going to be doing something good? So we'll take a look at the Paso Robles water plans and the planting ordinance, very, very briefly, that's going to go. And then something I won't talk about, but the county planning has predicted over the entire county a 2.3% per year increase in rural residential. And guys building ranchettes. Well, that would obviously be an extra water demand. We have no idea where and what it would do in the Paso Robles basin itself. But I'm putting it in there as part of the county's planning for rural residential throughout the county. Okay, let's take a look at Paso Robles. This is the Paso Robles plan that goes from up to 2040. Rather interesting. They should be aware of stigma using 2040. And these are the basin well extractions and river well extractions for those two dates. And you might notice that the latter ones involve taking out more water. They've got this big development zone around Paso, it's purple zone, I think it's called, and they're going to be filling it up with houses and people. So that, and they've been very conservative about what they've been doing with their water. But nonetheless, it does show an increase in demand. Then we have this, which is being causing some friction. The planting ordinance, you may know that the planning commission threw out the planning ordinance draft that was submitted to it, which is going to increase a 25 from a 25 acre-feet per year allowable extra irrigation demand from users in the basin. And the entire planning commission said, no, you can't do that. Why don't you depend on Sigma and working with Sigma based? But that was the planning commission. I don't know what the board of supervisors could do with it. They could override planning commission and go with what they had before. But the implications of this quite severe in terms of what this would do to the basin. And the data can be derived from the EIR that came as an analysis of this. And it turns out that you end up with an enormous deficit. 9,000 acre feet per year extra water demand by 2045. And that's when this ordinance was going to run out. Paid no attention whatsoever to 2040. It doesn't even mention Sigma in the ordinance itself. It's that they exist in two totally different universes. But the fact is that if this goes through, there will be a considerable increase in water demand. Now, I know that the vineyard guys over there and everyone else, I think the whole of agriculture protested this from what I can see. So I don't know what the board of supervisors will do, but it obviously does not indicate sustainability in any way whatsoever. Okay, so finally, and it gets to the things we were talking about in terms of long-term planning. What is the likely climatic scenario for the Perseverance Basin in the future? Do we have any idea about what demands are going to be? And it turns out that the place to go is the climate change assessment models that are being made by the state of California. And this is the fourth edition of these that I'm showing here. But what they do is a very long and complicated study. What they do is look at GCMs, the jargon for global climate models. There are about 15 global climate models. They're sorted out about 5 that best suit California conditions. And these graphs show sort of thing where you expect to be in the future. And the bottom line with these dots is that for the Southern California, it gets both much drier and much hotter. For Northern California, it gets wetter and warmer, but not as hot as Southern California. But we're sort of balancing in the middle. And the implication is, as both ends get hotter, we get hotter too. But it's quite likely that our rainfall may not be substantially different from what it is now. Which is encouraging to know, except the hotter is a problem because it changes irrigation demand. And therefore, we will be using more water in vineyards, for example, and cropland simply because it's warm. In other words, when it rains in the winter, the water won't stay in the soil as long. It will be drying out soon. So these are the curves, and it's fairly depressing to look at these things. I will tell you that if we've been looking at the global stuff, we are way ahead of even the most predictions of where global CO2 and methane is going to be. We're leaping ahead by leaps and bounds above the worst possible prognostications of 10 years ago. So there doesn't seem to be any global idea that we should be ignoring get hotter global models. So this is scary. Okay, so if the everything is going down, where are we going to go? It's about 17 years to 2040. So what I try to do is be optimistic, which is unusual for me and quite and divide it into this are happy days when we have half wet and half dry years, okay, as against the historical record, which is more dry. Doing that, we actually come out okay. If we had this, we would be on just about on a draw with what is being taken out, unless you add demand. If you added this kind of demand, that you see for the Paparottles and for the ordinance. The extra is gone in the first year. So, yes, if we're very lucky, we go back to a healthy sort of rainfall environment, we're good. On the other hand, if I take the historic record, we only have 38% of the 17 years in that initial record are wet, so that you would actually have 274, 240 acre feet added to the basin. We would have 10.6 dry years and would remove 397,500 acre feet of the basin. So in other words, given an extrapolation past climate to the future, we're just going to be losing water from the basin. No hope of getting back to 2017. The losses just keep going on. So the funny thing is that the GSP seems to want to look at the rosy side front, kind of Monty Python style. They deliberately state, and there's the red font on the bottom, that they do not want to look at the most recent period of drought, as they define rather arbitrarily as atypical. So they went back to the earlier history that we've used all the time, which is fair enough. But the big question is the current situation atypical? And a lot of the climate people, particularly those people watching what the jet stream is doing, are saying, have you noticed what the jet stream has been doing lately? It's actually curving back on itself. It's coming in through northern Canada, then a quick whirl down New Mexico, and then whirling back up to Canada. Amazingly weak. And that indications are from simple affiliates that we are going to be entering a permanent El Nino condition as the ocean temperatures gain as well. So things are not looking good. But it'd be nice if they had a little consideration here about what happens if it is typical that we're going to be like the last few years. So lastly, you kind of they acknowledge a deficit in the basin. Okay? How are they going to make it up? And the weird thing is, they seem to want to make it up by having a mysterious set of external water going into the basin. Now, they don't define what that is, where it comes from, and that is really kind of a problem. In that I don't know how you have a plan in which your required water sources are completely and utterly undefined. And it seems to me a structural failure on the plan. And rather regrettably, I think the thing should be thrown out just on the basis of failing to identify where the water is going to come from to attain sustainability. So that's the end of it. I hope that was useful for you. I'm ready to give a text file of all the stuff from my people. What was I really sort of reading to you? Anyone that wants it. And I guess the slide set is available too if you want that. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate that. Do you have any question, discussion, or do that? Running a little bit long. So if there's, we're running a little bit long on the agenda, but does anybody have any pressing questions, comments in the room? Sorry, first hand, and then here. Go ahead.
Yeah, wanted to say that I certainly appreciated the work that they've done on this, and now to be done. There's a couple of things I would clarify that there is five-year review, and so should it remain dry, they have to report the DWR on a 5-year basis. Whether the sustainability levels, most of those are well monitoring, those have to be reported. So it's not like we're waiting 1 year to see how it all works out. The other thing too is on water quality. The water quality in the past road formation is pretty uniform. I mean, it's not terrible. It's when you drill below that into the Santa Margarita along the water quality really drops off. And those, as I understand it, the Sigma actually only in that local groundwater base.
Thank you.
So that's kind of a key thing. And also the planting ordinance doesn't allow an extra 25 acre feet for all sites. It only identifies sites that don't currently use irrigation, and it allows them an extra 25 acre feet per year. So it's not going to increase all sites, only some number that we don't really know. We just comment that.
Great, thank you, appreciate that. Eric, you have something?
Yeah, basically, this is about how we most productively use this information. Now, my understanding is that David's shared this information with the Department of Water Resources, which is currently reviewing sort of the second draft of the GSP that has been sent in. Either they will ignore this information and say the plan is done, or they will take heed of this information and say, go back to work. Do we have scenarios for what we can most productively do with this information in those two instances?
I got it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll a little bit about a wait and see what comes back, and as Steve knows, every 5 years gives a fresh round of opportunity, and of course what happens at the Board of Supervisors. Yeah.
And I just one comment. There has been one additional possible new water to state, and that would be use of recycled water from the city of Paso Robles and blended with some non-mineral water used as irrigation in lieu of groundwater pumping. So that was actually mentioned as one viable plan in the statement document that was submitted.
All right. Anybody online? Final comments or questions? All right. Oh, sorry, Marshall.
The critique around the GSP not identifying specific projects, my understanding is that the drafting of the GSP would identify the need for that, but that the GSP process did not at that stage allow for a specific project identification, and that was going to happen in the 5-year review. So I'm appreciative of the critique here, but I think this is, if I'm understanding what's being said properly, that there's a frustration that the scope wasn't wider, but I believe this is the document was kind of doing what was possible at the time. Does that match with other people's understanding?
And maybe you all just pause at that point. I think that's a fair question, and I think it's maybe good for a follow-up conversation, since this was more of a share information and maybe pose some questions, and then follow within that GSP structure itself. So, which is a long way of saying we don't know, Mark. Good question.
And I respect that, and we are all people here of good faith. But what I don't want is this to be suggested that there is not a desire for further water development and additional water, that the only solution is cutbacks, and that there is not groundwater development possibilities.
Great. Good. Glad to have points out there and multiple levels. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. And thank you, David. Okay, let's go through our ongoing updates. As our practice, I'm going to say each one, and if you have anything to add, caller. And sorry, I realized there was something. Okay, rain reservoir reports. drought monitor survey. Summary. Groundwater basin management efforts. Anything else? We do have GFP for the Edna Valley, it's on, Friday. IRWN.
Yeah, I'll just note the board did approve or authorize us to apply for the grant as we presented last month. So that's all moving ahead as planned. Yeah.
Not the water report. Cover that. State water project. Anything, desalination. Or desal project. Various county water programs, policies, and ordinances. And then any open recording. Yeah, Aaron.
Water conservation opportunities. I would just suggest people visit the website of the Slow Beaver Brigade, both for information about watery walks and about volunteer opportunities to help create what are called beaver dam analogs, which can hopefully be improved by actual beavers when they find these and say, this is a place to begin a new family. The 3-year-old beavers that strike out from their original families and are looking for a new place to settle and start a family. A beaver dam analog in a prime location often gives them that idea. Okay, there's already something to work with here, and then they make it perfect. So this is a water conservation opportunity because beavers are very good, not only at the many other virtues, fire breaks and climate action, coppicing, carbon drawdown, etc., and biodiversity. They are very good at promoting stronger underground spring flows and stronger percolation in the underlying basins.
Yeah, we had a great presentation from the Beaver Brigade, and they listed one of the challenges at the time was that they couldn't transport beavers outside of county lines. Remember that? And I guess they passed a state law so that they can transport them now.
Actually, there's an executive order that is kind of getting us partway there, and we will need legislation to get us the rest of the way there. And hopefully our state senator Laird, who has a lot of credibility as a former resources agency director, can introduce such legislation. So we'll, as the new legislative session gets started, we'll see where that can go. Perhaps we can encourage the county to endorse it and endorse it ourselves if it's the right kind of legislation.
Yeah, great, great. Thanks for the update, specificity on that. I also like to just share that the city of San Luis Obispo, our water staff, was looking at what's the kind of the conservation, what's the incentives that would be appropriate for businesses. And so they sent out a survey. I own a business, so just I received the survey, and it basically said, which of these incentives would you be interested in? You know, everything from low flow toilets, but also sidewalk cleaning devices. Like if we gave you this particular, you know, if you were able to get $150 off of this machine, and they had a diagram and showed what it is, and it was a very easy survey to do, and I thought it was a really terrific model. Nick Teague, I assume we don't have the results of that back yet at this time, but if you have any update of that, or if any jurisdiction is interested in that kind of survey and the results. Nick, anything to share on that? Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. Yeah, we were actually really pleased with the response to that. I think we released the survey on the 17th, and within a couple of days we had over 200 responses. And not only did we get, you know, the yes, we'd be interested in that, or no, it doesn't apply to us, or we wouldn't be interested in. We also had a field where we could say, well, you know, if you're not interested, what would you be interested in? Is it, you know, an increase in the rebate costs, or is it, something that's just not valuable to you? So we got a lot of suggestions other than what we had on the survey also. So the information is going to be extremely valuable to us in developing our water conservation program. So I think it was hugely successful for us.
Great, thanks. And then Nick, maybe when you keep us posted, when you have the results, I think that'd be worth a kind of a quick presentation here. Because we often struggle with how in the urban environment to offer up incentives.
Yeah, I would love to share the results of that survey and even just the results of the larger work that we're, that's going into as far as developing our conservation program.
Good. Anything else on ongoing updates? All right, and then future agenda items. Next month, we have the low impact development handbook updates to run by, and new topic TBD. Not sure that we have anything specific, any act, couple of the bylaw conversation as we will kind of get part 2 of that. Hopefully we'll have form. And then so that'll be the December meeting in person. We'll skip January. We're not scheduled for January meeting, and then we'll kind of map out the spring. Okay, and now is anything else on agenda? Anyone? Okay. And if any other member would like to, as David did, kind of share an item of interest or concern, just let us know. Sometimes drag you up front. Share anyway, but if people volunteer, that's good. Okay, public comment for items not on the agenda. Anyone have anything else they want to share? All right. Well, with that, we'll give you an extra 15 minutes of your life back, and see you all next time. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.